I think it's safe to assume most of my audience are primarily Versus fans. I can also assume you all heard of this little web series called Death Battle, the granddaddy of Versus shows. In spite of its highs and lows, everyone has their favorite matchups. Even big names like Nemesis Bloodreich has his favorite matchup, a kaiju matchup predictably, which is of course not a bad thing, and Destroyer vs Iris goes harder than I think it has any right to be. But what about myself? My most wanted matchup is Zangetsu vs Sukuna. I think I'm pretty open for why I love this matchup, and it's actually really cool when you dive deep into it. For starters, I just like both characters. Zangetsu is my favorite take on the inner demon trope because he's not just a dark reflection of Ichigo. Zangetsu is the power Ichigo wanted, to protect his friends. But he rejects Zangetsu because of its hollow nature, and all Zangetsu wants is for Ichigo to accept him, to grant him power, and ensure his survival. Zangetsu doesn't want Ichigo to die, he wants a host that doesn't put both their lives in jeopardy. His speech about the king and the horse shows his disgust at how Ichigo fights. He wants Ichigo to be stronger, which not only achieves Ichigo's desire to protect, but Zangetsu's desire to survive. It's a twisted form of loyalty that plays into the concept of symbiosis, in addition to him butting into saving Ichigo's lives on more than one occasion. Zangetsu stands as my favorite character in Bleach and my favorite Zanpakuto spirit, which is why I branded myself after him. Sukuna, on the other hand, is one of the best antagonists in New Gen anime in my opinion. Sukuna isn't evil for the sake of it, but because his status as the strongest sorcerer of his era gives him an arrogance and sadism that makes him monstrous. Sukuna plays as a good contrast to Gojo. Satoru Gojo is the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, born into the Gojo clan and inheriting the Six Eyes and Limitless technique. This makes him a treasure for the Gojo clan, but what makes me like Gojo as a character is the fact that he's human in spite of being the strongest. Sukuna, however, is a lot more monstrous and sadistic. He kills sorcerer and curses alike, because his power makes him untouchable, similar to Gojo. But again, unlike Gojo, Sukuna doesn't have those human qualities. In addition, his parasitic dominance with Yuji Itadori adds to his sadistic side that contrasts with Gojo's more human personality. I love both of these characters and would absolutely love seeing them fight. But the second part is the connections, and this is where things get interesting. They're originally anomalies due to their overwhelming strength and ruthless natures. Zangetsu, originally an artificial hollow named White who was made specifically to target and kill shinigamis, and Ryomen Sukuna being a sorcerer born thousands of years ago with a curse technique so powerful he killed curses and other sorcerers because he can, relishing in his strength. They were both originally defeated years ago before the main events of the story, White being killed by Isshin and Masaki, and Sukuna being killed by ancient sorcerers, leading to both of them leaving their essence behind to reincarnate within the main character of their stories. White leaving his essence within Masaki, which passed into her son Ichigo, fusing with his Shinigami powers, turning him into Zangetsu, and Sukuna splitting his essence into his 20 fingers and reincarnating within Yuji when he consumed one of his fingers. Both are ruthless in their fighting style, willing to fight anyone they please for their own reasons and desires, and both bear resemblance to the main characters, denoting their relation with each other. Zangetsu being Ichigo's Zanpakuto spirit, and Sukuna being Yuji's distant relative. And just the cherry on top, they both have conflicting motivations for why they torture their main characters in a way that makes them complete opposites. With Zangetsu's symbiosis relationship with Ichigo, wanting him to be strong to ensure his survival, and Sukuna's parasitic dominance over Yuji, wanting to break the poor boy's spirit. With a matchup like this, you know the analysis has a lot of potential. Their similar origins but clashing personalities can create an analysis where they both focus on Zangetsu's symbiotic relation with Ichigo, because despite him being a lunatic, he ends up being a blessing in disguise as he ensures his survival while granting Ichigo the strength he needed, becoming the mentor Ichigo never asked for, but the mentor he absolutely needed, contrasting with Sukuna's parasitic dominance with Yuji, and what plays into Sukuna's sadistic nature, which plays into Sukuna representing the malevolent side of being the strongest, and unlike Gojo, who's human in spite of being the strongest, Sukuna is more monstrous because he's the strongest. Death Battle has shown to be able to handle matchups like this, namely Bill Cipher vs Discord and Shigaraki vs Mahito. That's just the analysis though. The fight? Oh boy, the fight is something special. First of all, since Bleach and JJK both see spiritual beings, I don't think seeing each other is a problem. However, let's address how Death Battle can portray each character. Have Zangetsu take over Ichigo to fight Sukuna. Sure, it's something Ichigo has more than moved on from after his Dangai training. It's the best we can do for a matchup like this. Also, I really don't think it'd be weird if Zangetsu takes over Ichigo's body, especially if Ichigo gives consent. Also, I don't think it'd be weird if Zangetsu uses some of Ichigo's movesets or transformation, as he's shown that the minute Ichigo learns a technique or transformation, Zangetsu has two. Main exceptions being Mugetsu and Horn of Salvation. One strips his Shinigami powers entirely, the other is supposed to unify Hollow and Shinigami powers. It'd be weird for Zangetsu to use Mugetsu, especially when he's essentially erasing himself from existence, and it'd be even weirder to use Horn of Salvation considering he's already a perfect blend of Shinigami and Hollow powers. Everything else, however, is fair game. His Shinigami and Hollow powers anyways. As for Sukuna, give him either Megami Vessel or Heian Era form. Not because I don't like Yuji Vessel Sukuna, it's just in those two forms he has more to work with. Though I'd much prefer they use his Heian form because it gives Sukuna the most to work with. This fight can take place in Japan. It's only right considering both settings. In addition, the fight can take place in either Shibuya or Shinjuku. Both locations work for me. Now from this fight, there's two things I want from it. The first one is pretty easy, the choreography, animation, and destructive potential. What do I mean by this? I want Sukuna to be throwing cleave and dismantle that crumble buildings, use his divine flames to burn the area, domain expansion to create what he did in Shibuya. While Zangetsu is throwing out nuclear-sized attacks, taking Sukuna's cleave and dismantle like a boss, walking through Sukuna's malevolent shrine like Maharaga did, playing to the destructive nature of what both characters can do. All while Zangetsu and Sukuna laugh like maniacs, playing into Zangetsu's psychopathy and Sukuna's sadism. Really sell how utterly insane those two are. Not just a simple, crazy laugh moment. Have their laughter fill the air as the camera expand, revealing the utter destruction caused by the two. However, that's not all I want from the fight, which brings me to dialogues and interactions. I obviously don't want them to just go ham at each other. Their dialogue should reflect their differing viewpoints. The entire fight, they challenge each other's viewpoints on strength. Hell, the battle can begin cause Sukuna believes Zangetsu is a weakling for relying on Ichigo, a teenager like Yuji, for his survival. Zangetsu rebutting with how the fact that he relies on Ichigo is what makes him strong and challenges Sukuna to a fight, which he accepts. Best part about this setup, Zangetsu winning will be satisfying as we see Zangetsu killing Sukuna before our very eyes, proving himself right and criticizing Sukuna for his ignorance of forming bonds, even if it's just for his own survival. He could say something like, "You view your host as a horse and not a king. That ignorance is why you lost the fight." This will tie back to the analysis and play into what I like most about this matchup: their similar origins but conflicting personalities, Zangetsu's symbiosis relationship, and Sukuna's parasitic dominance. The potential for a matchup like this can work for a modern death battle, especially when you consider Shigaraki vs. Mahito and how that fight played into the characters' capabilities, and more importantly, their characters. Even if it's just at the end, Mahito telling Shigaraki he's just a sad little boy whose daddy was mean and wants to make it everyone else's problem, gets countered by Shigaraki saying that unlike Mahito, he actually has a reason to hate humanity, playing into the difference between Shigaraki and Mahito, being hatred and nihilism. They can absolutely play into the symbiotic versus parasitic side of Zangetsu versus Sukuna. So as you see, the matchup has an amazing setup for both the analysis and fight animation. However, the issue I think will mainly come from the fact that Death Battle and their handling of Bleach characters, which I won't blame because everyone either don't care or ignorant to Bleach's scaling. Like, Universal Naruto is still debated upon, meanwhile here's Bleach with blatant Universal scalings. But in Death Battle's case, they don't even know how Kyokusui Getsu functions, went with a roundabout way to get Ichigo's maximum output, even though there's more simpler ways, like to scale the guy. Like, Aizen and Yuha are right there. I mean, these fuckers would scale Naruto to moon level, but not do the same with Bleach? Huh? TLDR, I don't trust Death Battle to actually know what the fuck they're talking about at any given moment, especially with series I have little knowledge about. But I think the more likely issue is, well, who's asking for this matchup anyways? Unless by some miracle that someone else in this actual niche community of nerds likes both Bleach and Jujutsu Kaisen and just so happens to like Zangetsu and Sukuna enough to actually want this on Death Battle, I'm more likely to get struck by lightning twice before that happens. I'm more likely to get raped by a dolphin than this getting into Death Battle. A Sharknado is more likely to happen than anyone considering this matchup. On the flip side though, Bleach and Jujutsu Kaisen are coming in 2026 with big games on their hands. The end of Thousand Year Blood War and the beginning of the Calling Games and Shinjuku Showdown. So maybe this matchup could happen. I don't know. Better than Kenpachi versus Sukuna at least. Anyways, that's my most wanted matchup. What is yours? Sound off in the comments and let me know what you think of Zangetsu versus Sukuna. With that said, take care everyone.